Well, welcome back to a new Dave's Classic Garage Tours video and the second instalment of Will He, Won't He get that 2.25 Land Rover diesel engine going again? If you haven't seen it, part 1 is available in that link in the corner of the screen. For the rest of you, it's over to Dave at Series Magic in Melbourne.
More than enough.
Oh, it's fallen over.
Yeah. Fortunately, the top's empty.
Right.
Okay, so over here, what I've got is I've got a guide stud that I threw in just for the assembly to hold the gasket in place. Pull it out carefully, watching for that gasket there. And then offer up. Get them all started. Press the water pump home. Just slide them carefully. Thread them through. And once I've got the first 2 bolts through, it's just a case of put new washers on. There's that one. So a lot of the time you get told don't use power tools to do bolts up. Fair enough. Take it easy, go gently, and use the weakest stuff that you can find, and generally you can get away with it, me personally. So Audi rattle gun or Audi impact driver that I bought years and years ago, and I just use it for lightly spinning them in. And once I've got them all spun home, just enough to start closing up the split washers, and then I'll go and grab a proper driver and do it up to the correct tension.
You still leave plenty of tightening in there to do
Yeah.
after the...
Yeah, there's always plenty to go, because you've got to take up the little bit of space that the goop takes up, and if you have a look now, you can see where the split washers have compressed right down to flat. Yeah. So as long as you don't overdo it when you're going in with the rattle gun, you save yourself, or the impact driver in that case, you save yourself a fair bit of time. And as long as you get some movement on the nut or the bolt, you haven't over torqued it, so you know that you haven't got 40 Newton meters or about 25 foot-pounds sitting on a bolt that's only meant to have, 18, 20.
Yeah. In part 1, Dave mentioned the in-house laser cutting machine operated by business owner Marcel's brother Felix. Before we go on, let's go check it out. Okay, what do we got?
So I can bring that in here, and this is our little laser cutter, and I can place that there, and with that open I can come over straight away to the computer and generate an overlay of the part like this, and I can trace that part automatically. It takes a little bit of fiddling to do it perfectly, but generally it takes 30 seconds or so, and I end up with something that ends up looking exactly like this.
Okay, great, yeah.
Which is the part we want, and that's dimensioned correctly and everything, and then it is as simple as pulling out the part, placing in our gasket paper, and then I can update the view to see exactly where I'll be placing the cut.
Sure.
So I can move that so that it's going to sit nicely there onto the paper, and if I home this, it should be homing, and the laser cutter in a moment should start And so this gives us a labelled, perfectly cut gasket that now we can make for ourselves anytime we want it.
That's amazing. Oh, wow. Crikey.
Yeah.
is there preference to use a piece from the manufacturer, or are you happy?
It'll depend on the manufacturer. So some manufacturers make really high quality gaskets and they're readily available. Sometimes you can only get a low quality gasket even from a reputable supplier for some things, or the materials are poor quality, or the thickness of the gasket isn't ideal in the space we want it. You can end up with gaskets needing to take up preload, or you might have been using shims, but you actually want to be able to adjust for new bearings with a different setup. You'll change to using a different thickness gasket paper, and we can do that in a very straightforward way. Yeah. But we can also make a completely customised part if we have a part that someone wants modified to combine different suffix gearboxes or different parts that wouldn't otherwise seal well. We can completely customise that in a very easy way. And using the process of highlighting it, we're actually imaging the mating surfaces, and it's scale referenced with the camera. So yeah, it's not a new way to use a laser cutter, but it's a very straightforward way for us to get good gaskets.
Done already? Wow.
Yeah, so that now, that's our gasket. It's tabbed together a bit so that it doesn't flex if they're complex, but
cool. Okay,
so with that, like that, that drops on and is an absolutely perfect fit, and that is often a better fit than what we will get from a reputable manufacturer. We can make adjustments for things as well to suit setups that we may do slightly differently to get better fits or better tolerances, or to make allowances for aftermarket parts where you can't get original parts and the tolerances are slightly different in other areas in a stack up.
Is that a common thing now, about becoming more common on Land Rovers?
It's extremely difficult to get, unless you have access to new old stock parts that are dwindling. It's very hard to get parts that are actually in spec all the time, and so often we'll be looking at parts that have, they're not British manufactured. The best really at the moment are Italian manufactured parts, of newly manufactured parts, but they don't make everything, and the stuff they don't make, they're often knockoff parts that are poorly cast, poorly manufactured, and a good proportion of those actually have to be discarded or remachined. Or for gaskets, grossly
it's not always such an issue. We can make quite basic things, and you can just.
So we've got.
So what have you just found?
We've got a possible differentiation on the engine here. These bolts, which are from that block, and this water pump belongs to that block, but because we have the damaged timing case, what we've done is replace the timing case, and there may be a difference in the threads from the water pump to the timing case. You guys get a little bit annoying about that, but this being British, there's a number of different threads on here for doing different jobs. They've got different size heads on the bolts. So your British standard finer, British standard Whitworth versus metric, and versus Imperial are your more common ones. But things like, these aren't the original glow plugs, but the original glow plugs, that thread there is a BSE thread, which is British standard electrical. And then you've got other things like the fittings over here on the plug on this side of the engine here, which is where you would normally put your heater plug in. That's got a BSP thread on it. If you follow through what the actual thread is trying to do, it makes sense for it to be the standard that the British had for doing that job everywhere else.
Were you saying you could find different thread?
Yeah, on this, working on this, I wouldn't be surprised to find metric, Imperial, British standard Whitworth, and then British standard electrical, British standard pipe on one sub-assembly. And they've all got vagaries to the threads and how well the nuts and bolts go together.
Crazy.
Yeah, par for the course.
Well, that's just Land Rover, yeah? Or British,
anything British. Anything old and British. So it wasn't a missed thread, it was just an alignment issue on the pump. In this case. Which is going to save me much swearing and cursing, because then I'm not going to lose a gasket. And that's it. Clean it down, it's ready for the next bit. So the process for doing the timing seal, which is that one that we were doing earlier on that engine, up here on the manual, this is the last edition of the Series 3 workshop manual. It includes the note that tells us about doing the self-tapping drive screws to hold it in. And if we've got the self-tapping drive screws to hold it in, when we do the timing cover and oil seal, we don't have to follow a 2-page document. It's undo a handful of screws, take it out. And you can see they show you there the way that everything's meant to go, and one of the nice inclusions, they give you a nice breakdown of the orientation of the seal and how it should all go together.
Oh. So not all bad, the British engineering stuff.
Well, you know, they fixed it the second time around. Torque to 150 foot-pound. Diesels, 200 foot-pound. Panel so that we can have a run up with some degree of protection. Because I'm only going for an initial run, I'm going to run for maybe 7 or 8 seconds. It's just enough to prove the injector pump. I'm not going to run it for long enough to need the temperature sender, so I'm not going to throw the temperature sender in on the engine, and she'll be good to go.
Time of reckoning, eh?
Well, you know, see how bad this can possibly be. No, I might like to start straight up. Okay, so all I've done there is I've rolled it over. While it's been rolling over, I've had the injector pump open wide to try and bleed the injector lines. I've just been watching the oil pressure gauge and waiting for the oil pressure to come up so that I know that I've got a primed up oil system and it's ready for an actual crack at bleeding up. Cleaning the engine down so that we can run it properly, find all the oil leaks, give it the run-up checks, and all the other good stuff that goes with it.
She lives.
They call that the money shot.
Cool. Another one lives on. If you love this video, you're going to absolutely love this one. So click on the screen and watch that, and I'll see you in the next video.